A modern stadium is a place or venue for outdoor sports, concerts, or other events and consists of a field or stage either partly or completely surrounded by a structure designed to allow spectators to stand or sit and view the event. Pausanias noted that for about half a century the only event at the ancient Greek Olympic festival was the race that comprised one length of the stade at Olympia, where the word stadium originated. Etymology. Stadium comes from the Greek word stadion, a measure of length equaling the length of 600 human feet. As feet are of variable length, the exact length of a stadion depends on the exact length adopted for 1 foot at a given place and time. Although in modern terms one stadion equals 600 ft, in a given historical context it may actually signify a length up to 15% larger or smaller. The equivalent Roman measure, the stadium, had a similar length, about 185 am, but instead of being defined in feet was defined using the Roman standard passus to be a distance of 125 passi. Although most dictionaries provide for both stadiums and stadia as valid plurals, etymological sticklers sometimes apply stadia only to measures of length in excess of one stadium. The English use of stadium comes from the tiered infrastructure surrounding a Roman track of such length. History. The oldest known stadium is the one in Olympia, in the western Peloponnese, Greece, where the Olympic Games of antiquity were held from 776 BC. Initially the games consisted of a single event, a sprint along the length of the stadium. The stadion, a measure of length, may be related to the stadium, but the track at the stadium at Olympia is longer than the conventional stadion. Greek and Roman stadiums have been found in numerous ancient cities, perhaps the most famous being the Stadium of Domitian, in Rome. The excavated and refurbished ancient Panathenaic Stadium hosted an early version of the Olympic Games in 1870, 1875, 1896 and 1906. The excavation and refurbishment of the stadium was part of the legacy of the Greek national benefactor Evangelos Zappos, and it was the first ancient stadium to be used in modern times. Modern stadiums. The first stadiums to be built in the modern era were basic facilities, designed for the single purpose of fitting as many spectators in as possible. With tremendous growth in the popularity of organized sport, especially football, in the late Victorian era, the first such structures were built. One such early stadium was the Lansdowne Road Stadium, the brainchild of Henry Wallace Doverton Dunlop, who organized the first All-Ireland Athletics Championships. Banned from locating sporting events at Trinity College, Dunlop built the stadium in 1872. I laid down a cinder running path of a quarter-mile, laid down the present Lansdowne Tennis Club ground with my own theodolite, started a Lansdowne Archery Club, a Lansdowne Cricket Club, and last, but not least, the Lansdowne Rugby Football Club, colours red, black and yellow. Some 300 cartloads of soil from a trench beneath the railway were used to raise the ground, allowing Dunlop to utilise his engineering expertise to create a pitch envied around Ireland. Other early stadiums from this period include the Stamford Bridge Stadium and Anfield Stadium. Goodison Park was the first purpose-built stadium in the world. Walton-based building firm Kelly Brothers were instructed to erect 2 uncovered stands that could each accommodate 4,000 spectators. A third covered stand accommodating 3,000 spectators was also requested. Everton officials were impressed with the builder's workmanship and agreed to further contracts. Exterior hoardings were constructed at a cost of £150 and 12 turnstiles were installed at a cost of £7 each. The stadium was officially opened on August 24, 1892 by Lord Kinnaird and Frederick Wall of the Football Association. No football was played. Instead, the 12,000 crowd watched a short athletics event followed by music and a fireworks display. Upon its completion, the stadium was the first joint-purpose-built football stadium in the world. The architect Archibald Leitch brought his experience with the construction of industrial buildings to bear on the design of functional stadiums up and down the country. His work encompassed the first 40 years of the 20th century. One of his most notable designs was the Old Trafford in Manchester. The ground was originally designed with a capacity of 100,000 spectators and featured seating in the south stand under cover, while the remaining 3 stands were left as terraces and uncovered. It was the first stadium to feature continuous seating along the contours of the stadium. These early venues, originally designed to host football matches, were adopted for use by the Olympic Games, the first one being held in 1896 in Athens, Greece. The White City Stadium, built for the 1908 Summer Olympics in London, is often cited as the first modern seater stadium. Designed by the engineer J. Webster and completed in 10 months by George Wimpey, on the site of the Franco-British exhibition, this stadium with a seating capacity of 68,000 was opened by King Edward VII on April 27, 1908. Upon completion, the stadium had a running track 24 ft wide and 3 laps to the mile. Outside there was a 35-foot wide, 660-yard cycle track. The infield included a swimming and diving pool. The London Highbury Stadium, built in 1913, was the first stadium to feature a 2-tiered seating arrangement when it was redesigned in the Art Deco style in 1936. The ancient stadium, Hippodrome. Stadium. Circus. The Greek hippodrome was the basic model for both the Roman stadium and the Roman circus. A hippodrome and a stadium may be of similar size, while the largest circus structures can have seating capacities up to 10 times greater. In practice, however, the association of one of these 3 words with a given structure may be more the result of some naming convention than a reflection of any characteristic of its physical size or structure. Indeed, from one epoch to another the same structure may be known by different names. For example, the Stadium of Domitian was also known as the Circus Agonalis. In another example, a structure at Aphrodisios can be found referred to as a stadium, or a hippodrome, while it has the size and structure of a small circus. Examples of ancient stadiums: the modern stadium. Types: domed stadiums are distinguished from conventional stadiums by their enclosing roofs. Many of these are not actually domes in the pure architectural sense, some being better described as vaults, some having truss-supported roofs and others having more exotic designs such as a tensegrity structure. But, in the context of sports stadiums, the term dome has become standard for all covered stadiums, particularly because the first such enclosed stadium, the Houston Astrodome, was built with an actual dome-shaped roof. Some stadiums have partial roofs, and a few have even been designed to have movable fields as part of the infrastructure. The Mercedes-Benz Superdome in New Orleans is a true dome structure made of a lamellar multi-ring frame and has a diameter of 680 feet m. It is the largest fixed dome structure in the world. 6. Even though enclosed, dome stadiums are called stadiums because they are large enough for, and designed for, what are generally considered to be outdoor sports such as athletics, American football, association football, rugby, and baseball. Those designed for what are usually indoor sports like basketball, ice hockey and volleyball are generally called arenas. Exceptions include the basketball arena at Duke University, which is called Cameron Indoor Stadium, Red Bull Arena, which is home of the New York Red Bulls of MLS, and the now demolished Chicago Stadium, former home of the Chicago Blackhawks of the NHL and Chicago Bulls of the NBA. Design issues. Different sports require fields of different size and shape. Some stadiums are designed primarily for a single sport while others can accommodate different events, particularly ones with retractable seating. Stadiums built specifically for association football are quite common in Europe. However, Gaelic Games stadiums would be most common in Ireland, while ones built specifically for baseball or American football are common in the United States. The most common multiple-use design combines a football pitch with a running track, a combination which generally works fairly well, although certain compromises must be made. The major drawback is that the stands are necessarily set back a good distance from the pitch, especially at the ends of the pitch. In the case of some smaller stadiums, there are not stands at the ends. When there are stands all the way around, the stadium takes on an oval shape. When one end is open, the stadium has a horseshoe shape. All 3 configurations are common, especially in the case of American college football stadiums. Rectangular stadiums are more common in Europe, especially for football, where many stadiums have four often distinct and very different stands on the four sides of the stadium. These are often all of different sizes and designs and have been erected at different periods in the stadium's history. The vastly differing character of European football stadiums has led to the growing hobby of ground hopping, where spectators make a journey to visit the stadium for itself rather than for the event held there. In recent years, the trend of building completely new oval stadiums in Europe has led to traditionalists criticizing the designs as bland and lacking in the character of the old stadiums they replace. In North America, where baseball and American football are the two most popular outdoor spectator sports, a number of football-baseball multi-use stadiums were built, especially during the 1960s, and some of them were successful. However, since the requirements for baseball and football are significantly different, the trend, beginning with Kansas City in 1972 and Euro 1973 and accelerating in the 1990s, has been toward the construction of single-purpose stadiums. In several cases, an American football stadium has been constructed adjacent to a baseball park, to allow for the sharing of mutual parking lots and other amenities. With the rise of MLS, the construction of soccer-specific stadiums has also increased since the late 1990s to better fit the needs of that sport. In many cases, earlier baseball stadiums were constructed to fit into a particular land area or city block. This resulted in asymmetrical dimensions for many baseball fields. Yankee Stadium, for example, was built on a triangular city block in the Bronx, New York City. This resulted in a large left field dimension but a small right field dimension. Before more modern football stadiums were built in the United States, many baseball parks, including Fenway Park, the Polo Grounds, Wrigley Field, Comiskey Park, Tiger Stadium, Griffith Stadium, Milwaukee County Stadium, Shibe Park, Forbes Field, Yankee Stadium, and Sportsman's Park were used by the National Football League or the American Football League. Along with today's single-use stadiums is the trend for retro-style ballparks closer to downtown areas. Oriole Park at Camden Yards was the first such ballpark for Major League Baseball to be built, using early 20th century styling with 21st century amenities. There is a solar-powered stadium in Taiwan that produces as much energy as it needs to function. Stadium designers often study acoustics to increase noise caused by fans' voices, aiming to create a lively atmosphere. Spectator areas and seating. An all-seater stadium has seats for all spectators. Other stadiums are designed so that all or some spectators stand to view the event. The term all-seater is not common in the U.S., perhaps because very few American stadiums have sizable standing-only sections. Poor stadium design has contributed to disasters, such as the Hillsborough disaster and the Heysel Stadium disaster. Since these, all FA Premier League, UEFA and FIFA World Cup qualifying matches require all spectators to be seated. The spectator areas of a stadium may be referred to as bleachers, especially in the US, or as terraces, especially in the United Kingdom, but also in some American baseball parks, as an alternative to the term tier. Originally set out for standing room only, they are now usually equipped with seating. Either way, the term originates from the step-like rows which resemble agricultural terraces. Related, but not precisely the same, is the use of the word terrace to describe a sloping portion of the outfield in a baseball park, possibly, but not necessarily for seating, but for practical or decorative purposes. The most famous of these was at Crossley Field in Cincinnati, Ohio. Many stadiums make luxury suites or boxes available to patrons at high prices. These suites can accommodate fewer than 10 spectators or upwards of 30 depending on the venue. Luxury suites at events such as the Super Bowl can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Political and economic issues. Modern stadiums, especially the largest among them, are mega-projects that can only be afforded by the largest corporations, wealthiest individuals, or government. Sports fans have a deep emotional attachment to their teams. In North America, with its closed league franchise system, there are fewer teams than cities which would like them. This creates tremendous bargaining power for the owners of teams, whereby owners can threaten to relocate teams to other cities unless governments subsidize the construction of new facilities. In Europe and Latin America, where there are multiple association football clubs in any given city, and several leagues in each country, no such monopoly power exists, and stadiums are built primarily with private money. Outside of professional sports, governments are also involved through the intense competition for the right to host major sporting events, primarily the Summer Olympics and the FIFA World Cup, during which cities often pledge to build new stadiums in order to satisfy the International Olympic Committee or FIFA. Corporate naming. In recent decades, to help take the burden of the massive expense of building and maintaining a stadium, many American and European sports teams have sold the rights to the name of the facility. This trend, which began in the 1970s, but accelerated greatly in the 1990s, has led to sponsors' names being affixed to both established stadiums and new ones. In some cases, the corporate name replaces the name by which the venue has been known for many years. But many of the more recently built stadiums, like the Volkswagen Arena in Wolfsburg, Germany, have never been known by a non-corporate name. The sponsorship phenomenon has since spread worldwide. There remain a few municipally owned stadiums, which are often known by a name that is significant to their area. In recent years, some government-owned stadiums have also been subject to naming rights agreements, with some or all of the revenue often going to the teams that play there. One consequence of corporate naming has been an increase in stadium name changes, when the namesake corporation changes its name, or if it is the naming agreement simply expires. Phoenix's Chase Field, for example, was previously known as Bank One Ballpark, but was renamed to reflect the takeover of the latter corporation. San Francisco's historic Candlestick Park was renamed as 3Com Park for several years, but the name was dropped when the sponsorship agreement expired, and it was another 2 years before the new name of Monster Cable Products Monster Park was applied. Local opposition to the corporate naming of that particular stadium led San Francisco's City Council to permanently restore the Candlestick Park name once the Monster contract expired. More recently, in Ireland, there has been huge opposition to the renaming of Dublin's historic Lansdowne Road as the Aviva Stadium. Lansdowne was redeveloped as the Aviva, opening in May 2010. On the other hand, Los Angeles' Great Western Forum, one of the earliest examples of corporate renaming, retained its name for many years, even after the namesake bank no longer existed, the corporate name being dropped only after the building later changed ownership. This practice has typically been less common in countries outside the United States. A notable exception is the Nippon Professional Baseball League of Japan, in which many of the teams are themselves named after their parent corporations. Also, many new European football stadiums, such as the Reebok and Emirates stadiums in England and Signal Iduna Park and Allianz Arena in Germany have been corporately named. This new trend in corporate naming is distinguishable from names of some older venues, such as Crossley Field, Wrigley Field, and the first and second Busch stadiums, in that the parks were named by and for the club's owner, which also happened to be the name of the company owned by those club owners. Sky Dome in Toronto, Canada was renamed Rogers Centre in 2005, removing any reference that it is a domed stadium. During the 2006 FIFA World Cup in Germany, some stadiums were temporarily renamed because FIFA prohibits sponsorship of stadiums. For example, the Allianz Arena in Munich was called the FIFA World Cup Stadium, Munich during the tournament. Likewise, the same stadium will be known as the Ma 1/4 NCHEN Arena during the European competitions. Similar rules affect the Imtech Arena and Veltins Arena. This rule applies even if the stadium sponsor is an official FIFA sponsor. The Johannesburg Stadium, commercially known as Coca-Cola Park, bearing the name of one of FIFA's major sponsors, was known by its historic name of Ellis Park Stadium during the 2010 FIFA World Cup. Corporate names are also temporarily replaced during the Olympics. Music venues. From the 1960s, stadiums began to be used as live music venues, giving rise to the term stadium rock, particularly for forms of hard rock and progressive rock. The origins of stadium rock are sometimes dated to when the Beatles played Shea Stadium in New York in 1965. Also important was the use of large stadiums for American tours by bands in the later 1960s, such as the Rolling Stones, Grand Funk Railroad and Led Zeppelin. The tendency developed in the mid-1970s as the increased power of amplification and sound systems allowed the use of larger and larger venues. Smoke, fireworks and sophisticated lighting shows became staples of arena rock performances. Key acts from this era included Journey, REO Speedwagon, Boston, Foreigner, Styx, Kiss, Peter Frampton and Queen. In the 1980s arena rock became dominated by glam metal bands, following the lead of Aerosmith and including Ma Paragraphedly Cra One Quarter E, Quiet Riot, WASP and Rat. Since the 1980s pop and folk stars including Madonna, Britney Spears, Lepa Brenner, Taylor Swift and Lady Gaga have undertaken large-scale stadium-based tours. See also: List of indoor arenas, List of sports attendance figures, Lists of stadiums, List of stadiums by capacity, Olympic Stadium, Stade, Stade, Start, Sport Venue, Sports Complex, Multi-Purpose Stadium, Modular Stadium. Notes. References: John, Geraint. Rogier. Ben Vickery. Stadia, A Design and Development Guide. Amsterdam, Elsevier Architectural Press. ISBN A978-0-7506-6844-6. Serby, Myron W. The Stadium. A Treatise on the Design of Stadiums and Their Equipment. New York, Cleveland, American Institute of Steel, Incorporated. External links: World Stadiums, Football Match Stadium Guide, Stadium Archive, Stadium Journey, community for sports travelers to exchange information about their stadium experiences, reviews of stadiums and arenas, Stadiums World, Stadiums of Euro 2012, sports stadiums with great architecture.